I want to know what you think. Do you think that the federal government has taken far more power than they were actually allowed to have under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Do you think that the federal government needs even more power? Do you need even more power to regulate, to control, to manipulate, to go to war without Congress, to do everything they've been doing just by executive order and because they say so? Do you think we would be in better shape if there were no states at all, no state constitutions, no state rights, and it's all federal government in full, total control all the time? Kind of like a dictatorship. No constitution, no states' rights, none of that. Just give it all to Washington, all to the president to do whatever they see fit, whenever they see fit. This article here from Politico, and I've checked this with other sites, and it's legit. There's all kinds of sites talking about this right now. Trump says Republicans should nationalize elections. What could possibly go wrong? Taking the elections, the power from the states to control the vote in the states and to count the votes, to pretty much the whole election process would be torn down and given to the federal government. So the states' rights would be gone, and it would be in the hands of the federal government. Do you trust the federal government when you do the state? I don't. Do you think the federal government is trustworthy? I don't. I don't think the states are trustworthy. The counties, the cities, none of the governments are actually trustworthy. But if you take all the rights and give it to the federal government, it's going to be controlled in that one group right there, in the executive branch. It's going to control everything. It's not constitutional, but as we've seen many, many times before, Donald Trump has probably never read the Constitution. And if he had, he wouldn't care anyway, because his main goal, just like Joe Biden, just like Obama, just like all these presidents that we've had, their main goal is to get more power for the federal government, take more power from the states, take more power from the Congress, and give it to themselves in the executive branch. And Donald Trump wants to take over the elections from the states, which isn't constitutional, but that doesn't stop what the government tries to do anymore. The Constitution seems like it's just paper. They've already wadded that up and threw it in the trash can a long time ago. President Donald Trump said Monday that Republicans should nationalize elections, continuing to double down on false conspiracy theories about widespread voter fraud in 2020 presidential election. And you can see they're already putting their own political swing on this. Politico is about false conspiracy theories. There was all kinds of evidence that there was a whole lot of voter fraud in 2020. I actually said when Donald Trump was running against Joe Biden that Joe Biden was going to win the election by just this right here, voter fraud. And that actually happened. People was telling me at the time, not going to happen whatsoever at all, Trump 4 more years. And I knew what was going to happen. It was pretty obvious what was going to happen. The way he was setting up all the ballot drop-offs and everything like that, I knew what they was going to do. And it happened just like I said that it would. But do you want the federal government to take over and take elections from the states? No. Because what happens when Donald Trump croaks over? Because he's getting old. What happens if someone else takes over the federal government that you don't like? What happens when some Democrat takes over? A lot of people say Trump's still get a Democrat. He was all his life, and here he is saying he's a Republican now. So, what happens when someone else goes into power? If you give all this power to the federal government, get rid of the Constitution, get rid of the states' rights, get rid of everything, and let everything be done by the president in executive order, then what happens when your man is gone? When your man is out of office and someone else takes over? They're going to have the same power that this guy took because he already took it. So they already have it, and they will try to get more. That's the way it works. They get some, next one comes in and gets some more, and gets some more. But Trump right now, man, he is grabbing and reaching for everything he can as far as power goes. He definitely thinks that everything should be right here, centered on him. Any decision in the whole United States, states' rights gone, Congress gone, war, whatever, should be up to him, out of whim. That's what he thinks. And pretty much that's what we're seeing, because the Republicans, a lot of them, besides Thomas Massey, are afraid to speak up because they're afraid of Donald Trump. They're afraid that he will come out and come against them in the next election, their congressional election, their Senate election, and he won't give his support. So they think they'll lose the election, so they turn down the yes men. They let Donald Trump think and do pretty much whatever he wants to do, and they're just yes men. They don't put up a fight or anything like that at all. So what happens when he's gone and someone you don't like takes over? You might not like Donald Trump now, but someone could be worse that comes along. I mean, who knows at this point? You don't want to give all the power to the federal government. That's what I'm saying. It's ridiculous. But Donald Trump is just grasping for every bit of power he can possibly get. The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans are to nationalize the voting. He said during an appearance on former Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino's podcast, which he relaunched Monday. Dan Bongino, no such thing as the Epstein files. Remember, the states are merely an agent for the federal government in counting and tabulating the votes. Remember, the states are merely an agent for the federal government. The federal government's on top. They're in control over the states. Crazy. Counting and tabulating the votes. He wrote in an August social media post, they must do what the federal government, as represented by the President of the United States, tells them to do for the good of our country. That is crazy. You think about that. That is, poof. That is what you call a dictator. That's what you call taking ultimate power, at least wanting to. Remember, the states are merely an agent for the federal government in counting and tabulating the votes, he wrote in an August social media post. They must do what the federal government, as represented by the President of the United States, tells them to do. No, they don't. It's not the way it works. A separate executive order signed by Trump last March that aimed to add proof of citizenship to the National Voter Registration Form and alter mail-in voting procedures. I agree with all that right there, 100%. This right here I agree with. This here's be done for sure. I definitely agree with this right here. Donald Trump came up with that executive order. A separate executive order signed by Trump last March that aimed to add proof of citizenship to the National Voter Registration Form and to alter mail-in voting procedures for states has been largely blocked by federal judges. Said they're blocking it. And I agree with this right here, what Trump's trying to do right here. They should have to have proof you are a citizen, you were born in the United States, or at least have an actual citizenship here in the United States before you can vote. Not illegal, not someone who crosses the border, not someone here on a work visa or whatever. You should have to be a citizen of the United States and have to prove it in every state in the United States. So I definitely agree with that with Donald Trump when he says that. I also agree that the election, they're saying here, was conspiracy theory, but there was definitely widespread voter fraud in 2020. I agree with Donald Trump on that. However, taking over the elections, trying to take more and more power from the states and the Congress and the Senate, and saying things like this, they must do what the federal government, as represented it by the President of the United States, tells them to do. That is a dictator. That is what that is. That is a dictator. And we've seen this on multiple occasions, multiple things. The Constitution is just wadded up paper and thrown in the garbage. That's all it is anymore to the federal government. And they're still not happy. They want more and more power. And they've all been this way. Obama's this way. They all thought they were, Obama's always that nose in there, and he thought he was a king. And Joe Biden thought they could just do whatever he wants to do. But each one takes more power, more executive power. They set the example for the next one that comes along. Donald Trump, man, he has, within the first year of his second term, he has been just reaching and grabbing every bit of power he can take and grab. And no one seems to be willing to try to stop him. None of the states, Congress, the Senate, they're impotent, it seems, because he just grabs power everywhere. Some of the courts are trying to stop things like the federal judge blocked this, but this is something good that should be common sense, and I agree with Donald Trump on. This should have been done a long time ago. Crazy. But what do you think, guys? Do you think the federal government needs more power? Do you think that Donald Trump needs more power? Do you think the states has to do what the president says because he is the leader of the federal government, because he's a Teflon Don, the head of the mafia, pretty much? It's crazy. We're supposed to have rights, constitutions. We're supposed to have checks and balances to keep shit like this from happening. These people are not supposed to have ultimate power. That's why we have states. States' rights. That's why each state has its own constitution. That's why we have a Congress. That's why we have a Senate. That's why we have all the systems that we have in place to stop this from happening, because the Founding Fathers saw and knew that people want to take power. They want to gain more power. And each checks and balances put in place to keep any one person from gaining all the power. But it's failing. Apparently, because they've all been bought and paid for, blackmailed, and they've just let it happen. They just laid down, rolled over, and said, here you go. Let me win my next election. Let me get my earnings. Let me do all the insider trading to get my millions and stay here in my cushy job. And anything happens, that comes bad with all this stuff, we can just say he did it. He did it. And They're completely worthless, the Congress is. The Senate, completely worthless. The states, some of those states will stand up, but usually the ones that are standing up are stupid. The things they're trying to stand up for. Like keeping illegals here and things like that. If you're illegal, you should definitely be deported. The way they're doing a lot of this with people on the street with body armor and walking up and where's your papers, that's not constitutional either. They don't know if these people that they're going to are citizens or not. They should have to know which ones is which, track these people down. The police should be able to arrest these people, like traffic stops and things, and check for, their citizenship and stuff then, because they've been arrested for a crime, and then call ICE, call the Border Patrol, come and get them and throw them back across the border. But going in the streets and going to people's houses, questioning people that aren't doing anything at all, citizens also, because we're getting caught up in this too, everybody is. It's not just illegals that are getting questioned, asking for their paperwork. It's citizens also, people who are here legally. Where's your papers? And if this would have been Joe Biden doing this, a lot of people would have been bitching about this. But because it's your guy, it's okay. I want these people out of here too. That's here illegally. But it needs to be done in a different fashion than what's going on now. And they could do a whole lot without doing this. I mean, they're not really making a dent in all this with the tactics that they're using. But they could definitely do things differently than what they're doing. And they should have to go by the Constitution. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you liked the video, thumbs up. And if you don't, give it a thumbs up, because I'm expressing my opinion here, expressing my thoughts, and you can agree if you want to, or you can disagree. But I got the balls to come on here and say what I think, so I think that deserves a thumbs up.